So we've covered a lot of issues, and it seems like we're getting closer to the end, and a lot of things are happening. We have about, I believe I got the total, about 10,000 votes in out of the 14, 15,000 total Republican voters for our primary. So we're about a third of the way. So that means a lot of people are still undecided out there. So we're going to get this thing rolling. We have a typical format that we follow here with Renee from In Plain Sight Marketing is our moderator. And I'll let you say hello, Renee.
Hello, Renee. Sorry, just
It
it's
had to
been
be
a day,
done.
so I just figured I was going to go there. As Nathan mentioned, I'm Renee Plain with In Plain Sight Marketing, and we do have a typical format. We record these so we can put them up on Nathan's social and website because Nathan really does believe in getting his messaging out to as many people as possible so they can make an informed voting decision. Um, we will stick pretty close to our time. If not, if we don't have a lot of questions, we may cut a little bit early, but we try really hard to stick to no more than that 1 hour moment. Um, and I think that's really about it. This is an opportunity to ask questions and get to know Nathan and what he stands for, and allow him to answer any questions you might have. So we do have a few questions that have kind of come in prior to this via email or Facebook. So we'll start with those, and then if we don't have any come in through chat, Nathan, we'll just let you freestyle.
Oh boy, we're in trouble if that happens. I better get
Right?
my timer set up so I don't overspeak. So what's the
so,
first one?
um, so this isn't so much a question as a follow up to some previous questions. Nathan, you've talked a lot about growth and the permits that are available or have been issued in the county. And you actually did some follow up homework and went and talked with the county assessor, correct?
That is correct. It's one of those things that, people are. First of all, I hate numbers. As soon as somebody throws out a number, you wonder why did they pick that one. It must illustrate the point they're trying to make. So I've heard a lot of numbers about what can be built and what can't be built. How many are out there? How many building permits? So they keep saying how many building permits. So the only true count is how many vacant single-family lots are out there. Because let's just say I'm saying if I wanted to walk in tomorrow and pull a permit on a piece of property in Douglas County, how many are available for me to pull a permit on? How many are ready for me to go and I could start tomorrow? Shovel ready, right? That's the term everybody's using lately. So the only person or department that has that is the assessor's office. So I did call and said, can we do a query of how many vacant single-family lots are out there? The land use code 12, which is what it was when I was at Carson City. And he said, absolutely, showed me how to go online and do it myself. And inside of a minute and a half, I had a query and a total of all the vacant single-family lots in Douglas County that you could actually pull a permit on tomorrow. And lo and behold, that number was 1,441. So right now, today, if I wanted to pull a permit on one of these properties that they have approved for development, you could pull one permit on that lot because it's zoned single family. And sometimes builders do that, like when they subdivide, one parcel into 3 parcels. They'll go ahead and pull one permit on that lot while they're waiting to get the rest of their parcel splits done. So that is something that could happen. So all the parcels, you could pull 1,441 available building sites for a single family residence. And of course, it doesn't include multifamily, but that is what's available out there today. That is it. Now you can argue semantics about how many are out there approved and how many paper subdivisions are out there and all that stuff, but that's where everybody keeps arguing the line. So you can argue that however you want to, but if I wanted a permit tomorrow, I have 1,441 available lots I could pull a permit on. So there you go. That's the information I found out today, working on trying to, delve through all of this improvement mess. So that's what I have on that one for now. Unless you want more.
For now, I think that's okay. So then moving forward, the letters to the editor section in today's Record Courier was full. I think it went across 3 pages. And there were lots of letters to the editor. Pardon me. There were lots of letters to the editor about what was considered a smear ad campaign in the May 9th edition, regarding your opponent and the 2 other commissioners, or other 2 commission racers. And there's a lot of people who think that you're aligned with the PAC that ran that ad and that you knew about it. And so I think that would be a really great thing for you to address here tonight is, did you know that ad was going to come out, and are you aligned with that PAC?
So the answer is no and no. I did not know that was coming out. I've also received, I think 3 mailers now that I didn't know were coming. I recognize the pictures though, because they're me. They must have pulled them off my Facebook, because that picture is up at Lake Heenan, which is actually outside the county, just a smidge over in Alpine, with that massive cutthroat trout, which was catch and release. And I don't know if you can tell, but I had wet hands on that one too, so we didn't mess up any of the gel on that for those fish. But yeah, so I don't know the people that are in those packs. I've of course looked them up, and I know that I've met a couple. I'm assuming it's the couple, husband and wife, that run the one pack. I met them one time at a coffee shop when I was there to meet somebody else, and they introduced themselves, and so I talked to them for a little bit, and that was it. I hadn't met him before, and I haven't seen him since. And then it's basically the same for the other one, which I didn't even look it up because I knew that I'm not allowed to talk to him or do anything with any kind of a pack. It's not allowed. So was that ad harsh? It was pretty harsh. But there's absolutely nothing I can do about it. I can't call them up and say, hey, don't do that, because that's now crossed the line and I'm not allowed to have contact with the packs. So is it unfortunate that we're going that way? Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the whole point of my campaign, is that we need to bridge that gap. We need to talk, we need to communicate. And if we're tearing each other down, then that's that's not the way we should be working together. Again, I'm not angry with my opponent for wanting the same thing I do. That just validates me wanting the same thing, that somebody else wants to do it. So, I'm not gonna say I'm baffled, because it seems like it's the age we're in, but I wish it wasn't. And I'm gonna do my best to bring our local politics back to civility. You won't see me engaging in anything like that. I mean, it's starting to come my way. I think that's just what happens as the stresses of this election get closer, that people lash out or reach out or start to fear for their position, so they strike out. And I mean, for me, it's not even coming from my opponent. So it's kind of interesting. And not to say it's been really harsh. It hasn't. But, I'm not going to just sit back and do nothing. I will, answer to stuff that's not okay in my book, I guess. So yeah, it's pretty rough out there, I think, and I think it's going to get worse. But I can tell you, it won't be getting worse from me, because that's just not the way I roll, and it's just not productive. I have nothing to say about the other 4 guys running, because any of those, 2 of those 4 are going to be hopefully right aside me should I get elected. So, why would I want to trash them now and then have to, try to work with them later? That just doesn't make any sense. So I think that answered your question. I might have
I mean, that definitely answers my question. When I saw that ad on May 9th, my jaw pretty much hit the ground, because I was in disbelief that somebody went that way. And it did make me sad to see that it was getting so nasty so early on in the month. And it seems like it's getting worse through Facebook and the other ads and letters and stuff. So
yeah, did you see that one of the guys that was out walking door to door was accosted? I don't know what happened. They claimed assault, but all that means is somebody touched somebody. So I don't know what happened, so I'm not going to claim any of that. But it was obviously an altercation, and it's just, I just don't understand how you can come to blows on a disagreement of opinion like that. I mean, I know it's personal, I guess. Politics is always a divisive or emotional thing, but it doesn't need to be. It doesn't have to be. That's again what I'm trying to get out of there. And I keep getting told I'm a nice guy, and you know what? I feel like I am a nice guy, but it doesn't mean that I don't know what's going on or that I'm naive in what's going on. It just means that I choose to a path for me, and that's the way I go. I'm not gonna go. I choose not to go that other way. I mean, I'll do what I have to do when I have to do it, but other than that, I'm gonna try to make everything work.
Well, it seems like society in general has lost that civil discourse, which is sad because what you've said in the past several times is we all want what's best for the valley. We're all doing what we think is best for the valley, and we all have a vision of what we think is best for the valley. And so it's a shame that we can't all come together with that civil discourse.
Well said.
Anyway, I'm not running, so back to you. Speaking of your comment of being a nice guy, there's been ads and conversations saying exactly that you're a nice guy, but what do you stand for?
Oh, that's the question? What do I stand for?
That's the question. What do you stand for?
So I stand for objectivity. I say it over and over and over again. I am not going to come out and tell you that I am exactly for this or against that because it's not in front of me. There are so many times that you can go to the board meetings and you know how everybody's going to vote before they get there. There have been times where they've had pre-written statements, and it's like, well, did you listen to any of the comment? You already had your mind made up. Why do we even bother having comment? So that is exactly my platform. That is what I stand for, is being objective, doing the research, and listening to the people when they come in and make their comment, when they email me, when they, whatever method they get their message to me. That is what I want to hear. And I don't want to just hear I don't like it. Should I get elected and we go through and just say I don't want that? Well, that's not going to work. Why is it you don't want it, and what basis in fact is there for us not to do it? Because most of these things, yeah, they're emotional, but that doesn't mean that it's legally okay to say no just because we don't want it. So that's one of the things that's going to be, hard for me to do, because I'm admittedly the yes man. I like to do what people like, but at the same time, if the law says it's this and we have no choice but to vote this one way, then you got to show me a way that I can vote with you, because I want to do what you want, what the people want. So that's kind of where we're at, is we have to be able to do the research and present an objective argument and verify, and solidify your point of view, so that is what's going to sway. It's not just, I don't want it, or not in my backyard, and because I empathize with that completely. I have a big metal garage that's right in my view corridor that when that went up, I was like, oh man, but there's nothing I can do it. There's no view protection ordinance in Douglas County. So, people can build what they want to build on their properties as long as it meets the code. So, and there you go. It's the code. If you don't like it, we got to fix or change or modify the code to get it to so that it does what we want it to do. So, I mean, that's, in a long ramble, what I stand for is the will of the people based in fact, so we can make the right decisions, and keep in mind, which is one of the things that I feel is missing, and with a discussion that I had with another guy, is that when the board votes one way or another, we have to let the public know what the basis is for that vote. And I feel like a lot of times that's lost, and people don't understand why a vote went this one way, and the people that are against it still say, well, we said this, and so here's this number, and people are aghast at the number, but the vote went this way because of these other 6 other things, and that message is what doesn't get out there. And I think, communication is the key. If a vote goes one way, you're going to know why I voted that way, and disagree, agree with it, whatever, you will understand what my point of view was. So, and hopefully it aligns with you. I'm hoping I align with you most of the time, but we'll see how that goes. And that's even granting that I am elected. So that's still only a third of the way there.
Well, so that brings up an interesting question. So how are you going to share how you came to your decision? I know that there's board discussion prior to votes, and so I would think that that would be a good time. And I think that's generally where current commissioners share their thoughts on why they're voting the way they do, or whatnot. How would you take it one step further beyond that board discussion moment before a vote, and better educate your constituents on why you made that vote? Because not everybody watches those meetings or reads the minutes or follows up to better understand. They just see the final result and go from there. So how are you going to share your reasoning with your constituents?
So I've thought a lot about that, because I think that's something that should happen regardless of who wins, and I think that should happen in all the seats. So the first thing is, backing that up, is in the discussion, as you mentioned in the board, I feel like that should actually be a discussion. It's not, and I'm going to challenge that, and hopefully if I'm there, I'm going to ask, who's going to, Mr. Rice, he's going to be there, Mr. Engels. That way I don't make any assumptions. Should I be sitting there? Mr. Rice, convince me to vote yes on this. What is your perspective? And that way I can draw it out of them, hopefully, too. Mr. Engels, explain why it is that you feel that this should happen or this shouldn't happen. Because that doesn't seem to happen. And I feel like people want to be heard, and that's the same for the commissioners. The commissioners want to be heard, and I don't feel that. I think it's a two-way street. So that is one thing, is I would actually like to see that discussion become an actual debate and discussion, not just I believe no because of this, and move on. And then the next guy makes his statement, because you already knew that they were going to vote yes or that they were going to vote no. And it doesn't seem like anybody's open to the other side, but make those, so get the board to converse more openly. And then for me, I feel like continuing something like this, maybe on a monthly or a post-meeting basis, where we go through and let the public ask the questions, because then it's open to everybody. It's not just who can make it to this restaurant at this time on this day. It's open. You can come in, you can check it out at any time, and then you can get that information back and say, you know what, you totally missed the boat on this because of that and that. Or, and then at the second part of that would be flipping it to what's on the agenda for the next meeting. So maybe it happens on those Mondays when that information comes out. So that's one way I think we could do that. But part of it too is on the people. People have to go out and look. If you can't just be upset if you're not paying attention. I wasn't paying attention for a long time because I was happy and everything was going fine, and there weren't, I didn't realize what was going on around me. So I wasn't active in all of this political arena. I was living my life, raising my kids. I was participating in, our coaching and our volunteering and all the different things that I was doing then. And it wasn't until, something happens that draws you in that you realize, hey, something needs to happen. And that's what I've been doing. And since I've been running, talking to as many people as I can to get them involved and get them to understand that their voice needs to be heard.
So that's interesting that you had mentioned that too, and we're just having a discussion at this point. But so as one of the youngest board candidates that I've seen, at least in the last 8 years since I've really been following Douglas County politics, like, you're one of the youngest potential commissioners. What would you tell your younger constituents to actually get them fired up to pay attention? Like, what is it as, because, I run into this issue with friends as well. Like, the city, I'm here in Carson, so pardon me for being over county lines, but a couple of years ago, the city held some budget meetings to discuss the budget. And the city posted it on social media, in the newspaper, in Carson Now. They posted it on their billboard, and I think they did one other thing. And people were still complaining because they didn't know. And then they said that because I had my ear to the ground and I pay attention to those things, that of course I knew. But like, how at some point, how do you help them realize that they have to participate in the conversation? Like, how do you get them fired up? What would be your plan to get people fired up?
Well, part of that is going to have to be me being out there talking about it. So, when we go to
And
these
that's probably
events,
been rough right now, right?
yeah, you can't do it. Yeah, it doesn't
Yeah.
doesn't work.
Yeah.
There's no out there. The only people I've been talking to are the clients that I have in the construction because of whatever job I'm working on, and they always ask me how it's going. How's it going with that? And then we get into the conversations because you can't go knock on people's doors right now. Well, I guess technically you can because it's being done, but I'm not doing it because I feel like that's an intrusion, and I don't know how people feel about it. I personally am not afraid, but I respect other people's ideals. Um, so I'm not going to go out there and knock on the doors. I know that might hurt me in the election, but you know what? That's the way I feel. I'm not going to impose my will on somebody else because I want their vote. I mean that's not, it's just not me. So so yeah, how do I get it out there? How do you get them active? That I don't know. There's this easy solution to that. You got to go for the kids. That's how is this going to affect my kids? Explain that, and that's what will get people motivated because that's what our generation is. Used to be a few generations back, kids were born to work, and now kids are born to be raised. I think is that hopefully that's coming across the way I mean it. But like my dad, his parents, he was born to work on that farm. That wasn't his ideas, and what he was going to be doing until he was 18 were second to what the family needed to survive. That's totally the other way around now. We raise our kids and everything. Our whole worlds revolve around our kids. So that's just a different paradigm. So to get this generation of young adults and young families to get motivated in this arena they've got to start looking at what they're doing and what they're leaving for their kids, because that was part of what motivated me too, was starting to look around and seeing what the housing market was. And I admittedly contribute to the housing market. I work in that industry. I haven't drawn but maybe 3 affordable homes in the last couple of years because of my clients. That's not what they're building. So I'm a part of that. I'm a wheel in that cog. And now I'm starting to look around going, okay, wait a minute. We need to adjust the system here so that we have a solution so that our kids can come back and live here, because unless they're going to be set up by their parents with a method to buy into a house or even rent into a house, that's not going to happen. So that's part of what motivated me too, was saying, okay, wait, I got to do it for the kids. So that's kind of, I guess, part of one of the ways to attack it. How do you get it to them? You can't lead a horse to water. You can just put the water out and hopefully the horse finds it. So I would like to say I'll do better than that, but that's where we're at, I think, at this point.
So then, another comment that's come up in Facebook is someone was concerned for your ability to provide for your family should you be elected. And I know your situation. I know you're going to talk about that. And I have a follow-up question after you do. So it's not really so much a question, but someone being concerned for your ability to provide for your family should you be elected.
Right.
Is that a concern for you?
It's not a concern for me because I I basically run my own business. I have a partner, and so the two of us, we do residential design and structural engineering, and so we basically provide house plans for houses for single family residences and additions and garages and that kind of stuff. Um, so I can set my own schedule, and I have set my own schedule for a long time. Um, what's going to happen is the extracurriculars for me are what's going to change. I mean, I've coached for a long time, since I think 2000 maybe was the first. Actually, I was coaching when I was in high school because my dad coached, and he was my ride home. So I was at the end of the bench waiting for him to be done or helping with practice or whatever, and then I'd go home. So that's kind of, and I don't know if people understand, once you get to a certain level of coaching, and I was at basically the highest level you can get to, short of going off to a college. So I was running a complete basketball program at two different high schools. So there's a lot that goes into that. You're responsible for the coaching staff of three teams or two teams. You've got the budgeting. You've got scheduling. You're doing not only just your practice scheduling, but scheduling games, getting transportation, making sure that that's done. They have the athletic secretaries that do a lot of that, but you're still ultimately responsible for getting all that stuff together. So there's a lot of time that goes into that. Game film, getting prepped. Anybody that's coached at or near that level will tell you that's could be a full-time job as well. So I'm no stranger to those 60-hour weeks. So basically, I'm going to trade my coaching time for commissioner time, I guess, if you want to say it that way. So the amount of time I commit is not really the issue. The good part about that is that I will be able to be home more often, because I won't be off coaching. I'll be home researching, except for at the meetings that we have to attend. So I'm well aware of the workload. That was one of the first things that I established before I got started was, do I have time for this? And am I suited for this kind of work? So the answer is, after a lot of, what do you call it? Looking inward and talking with the family, was yes, and that's why I threw my hat in the ring.
There's also been, so my follow-up question to this, I almost forgot. My follow-up question to this is, you are a younger candidate, and so do you feel like this position is available to someone who isn't either self-employed or isn't self-employed or isn't retired? Like, do you feel like these positions are available to our younger generation right now? Like, is this something that is available and open with the way it is right this moment?
No, I guess I would say it wasn't, unless you had an employer that allows you to set your own schedule, because there are things that come up constantly. I mean, I spend a lot of time on this campaign trail, even though we're not out and about. I mean, I'm answering emails, getting things set up, phone calls, questions that come up, managing the social media part of it that I do. It's and then you guys help out with that already. So there's a lot of time that goes into this process, and so yeah, I could see where if you were working a paycheck to paycheck, you can't do it, unless you're able to set your own schedule. So yeah, I don't think that it is something that's accessible, and that's probably part of the reason why you don't see people out there that are younger running into these positions. So they're doing smaller boards or something like that, which I've also done. But they were always around what my family was involved with, so that I kind of double dipped. I was able to still spend time with my kids at the same time as feed that itch, I guess, that I have for the public service.
So the last real question I have for you before we let you go total freestyle and we probably just continue conversing as it comes up. Um, there has also been conversation on social and in ads and whatnot that you are maybe less qualified for this position because you're not active in Republican activities. And so, what would you say to that opinion?
Well, I would say that the Republican activities is not the entire county, first and foremost. And second, I will openly admit that I haven't been out there because I haven't seen the need, and that wasn't where I put my time in. I put my time in, like I said, with my doing my public service in other ways, and it was in things that revolved around my family. That being the coaching and the band things and those different elements, and they were also things that that I did well and excelled about. So I got a reward from that also. The teaching and stuff like that we've done, and the basketball camps and those different things that I've done and volunteered with. So have I spent time out mentoring? Have I spent time out in the community? Have I spent time managing organizations? Yes, I have. Have they been under the Republican R? They haven't been until just now. But does that make me any less qualified? No, I don't think it does. In fact, I would think that would make me more qualified because I feel like I'm more well-rounded because I've been out. I've been exposed to. I have a true connection with the community, and because I've been out there with them. And I guess today's the kid theme, but when people trust you with your kids, that's a huge responsibility. And I always try to represent the best I can because those guys are impressionable, and girls. I mean, I've coached both, and that's kind of, I feel like that's a basis, that understanding that the faith that people have in you, that's a huge responsibility. So I'm coming from that line of actually wanting to do good for all these people that are believing in me. I'm not doing this because I have a personal agenda that I want to see executed. My personal agenda is to see if we can get back to working together and being civil, and for us not to be, in the regional and national news for what's going on in our commission. So that's what it means to me.
And that's everything I had planned to talk about tonight. Going back to earlier conversation about how do we get people involved, it's rough because we've talked about this, I think, in past town halls. People can see what the participation is in the videos, so I'm not going to try and bolster it as we've had, gigantic crowds joining us, which has been frustrating because we haven't. But how do I guess I don't really know what my question is here, so that'll be fun in the replay. I guess what do you want to talk about? Because we don't have questions from a chat for tonight. So
well, one of the things I wanted to talk about was the voting. It's a big thing now. It's in the news. I guess President Trump threatened that he would withhold funding from the couple of states, including Nevada, that are doing only mail-in balloting. If he could, but he didn't say, he didn't know if he could or he couldn't. So the research I've done is that he cannot. But that doesn't mean that people don't have fears, questions, concerns. I guess the big thing I'd like to tell people is don't freak out. We have to trust in the people that we have assigned to do the job. And our clerk treasurer is, from what I've seen, is really good. So I understand that there's concerns about potential fraud, but I have seen that they're doing their job. I know one of my neighbors had his ballot returned to him because they questioned the signature. And of course the signature card was made when he was 18, 19 years old when he first signed up to vote. and now he's older, his signature has changed, and I fear for that myself. Um, so they are doing the work. I would say if you have a concern, you're probably valid in your concern, but what are you going to do about it? Don't freak out about it. Let's find a solution. For me, I'm going to hand deliver my ballot. So that's I'm going to be doing that here pretty quick. So that way I'm going to make sure that it was delivered. I mean, I believe it'll get there with the Postal Service. I'm not trying to insinuate that, but I know that I can take out one step by delivering it myself, and then I know it's there. So that's one of the things I'm going to do personally that's going to make me feel more comfortable knowing that my vote was cast and that it was received. So I think that's a big thing too that everybody needs to do is just, take it in. We need to have faith, and I know that that's harder and harder to come by these days. But our local election is being run by local people that have a vested interest themselves in doing the right job and doing a good job, and they do. A lot of people have pride. I know that a lot of people have pride in themselves and what they've done. Well, the people that are doing the other jobs, they have pride in their jobs too. So I want to have faith in our officials that they're actually going to take care of it and get those votes counted correctly. But if you have any questions or concerns, try to eliminate those concerns for yourself. Don't freak out. There's a way for it to be done.
You can just keep freestyling because
keep freestyling.
It's 7:10 and my brain is starting to shut down for the night. What else? We've talked about a lot of, I think, not personal topics, but the personal topics specifically about you and things being said about you and voting is personal and whatnot. Is there anything else that you want to talk about county related or?
Well, I mean, there's always stuff to talk about, but
I don't know.
These town halls can get a little bit dry.
Oh, issue related.
Do what now?
You can. You can tell us a joke.
Oh boy, that's risky. But you put me on the spot. I won't think of one.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was going for. So how about something issue related? What's one of the big issues going on right now that you've gone out and done some extra research on?
Well, one of them, we know is the big question is recovery. How are we going to recover? Where are we going to be? And so actually what I've been looking at is Douglas County is in pretty good shape. I don't think that we're going to have this big problem with funding, and I'm beginning to think that we're not going to be looking at layoffs, I don't think, because our tax base, a large portion of that tax base is is our property tax. And so that's not going to change. I think the biggest thing that's been affected has been the sales tax, or the C tax. But I don't think that people have recognized that we have 2 Walmarts inside of Douglas County, and Walmart hasn't slowed down. And in fact, when this recession first started, I can't remember the numbers, and I hate throwing out numbers, but it was they did something like 40 days worth of retail inside of 2 days or something like that when this first started out, and that's why the shelves were empty.
Where all the toilet paper went?
Yeah, that's where it went. They sold all of that stuff early. So if you think about it, the retailers have been selling as fast as they can get it in. So I'm not sure that we're really that far down on the sales tax. I mean, I know the casinos are down, and that's going to be a problem with the room tax, but that's going to go to parks. Part of the parks, besides going to the visit authorities, that goes to Parks and Rec. So that's going to be an issue if it keeps going. But the good thing is, that we've had pretty good and pretty conservative management of the budgets, and so we've had that reserve that they've been able to dip into. And I know that's where the Parks Department is going. They're gonna dip into that reserve and try to keep things moving and open. It's going to be how quick can we get out of this and how quick can we get people back to the old normal. That's going to be what I think drives where we go. If we stay relatively shut down for a long time, then the community center might get shut down. But if we can get back and start rolling and start creating some more of that income, then I think we'll be okay. And even looking at that C-tax, I believe that C-tax money was like 21 million of our budget, something like that. So say 20 million, and and 10 million of that went into the GIDs, and then the other 10 of that went into the general fund, or maybe it was 11 into the GIDs or something like that. Like I said, I hate numbers because as soon as you misquote one, you're terrible, and usually you're throwing numbers out to justify your position. So I think that we're going to be okay as long as we can get back to business. So that's really what I think is what we as a county should be pushing for. And I think we do that by doing. We have to get out there and start doing. I really do wish that we hadn't shut down the fireworks because that would have been a great way for at least the locals to get out and have some normalcy, even if the visitors from the Bay Area and Sacramento and stuff that would come up don't come. We'd still be having normal, and we'd still be having people feel comfortable to go back and do what we've always done, because that's really what's going to be needed. Did that inspire you?
It inspired me 100%. Oh,
I meant with another question.
I had some. Oh, did it inspire me with another question? It did, and just as quickly it faded. I think, what is something that you would be most excited about when elected? Because I'm just going to go in that direction. What is something that you are going to be the most excited about to work on?
To work on?
Yeah,
I am actually, am really, well, one is finding out what's going on with the water, because that is a big question, and everybody has their thoughts and what they understand, and I have mine too. I mean, I've done a lot of research on the water situation, but what it boils down to on the water thing is that a lot of it is calculations based on years and years and years of research and models and that kind of stuff. So I believe in it, but we need that survey. And so when that happens, then I would like everybody to say, okay, this is what it is, and join in. But there'll still be the naysayers that say, they didn't know what they were doing and whatever. But I really like to be able to do that so we can have a plan moving forward. If we could do that, that would be one thing that I'm really looking forward to, is trying to get us moving forward to a resolution on the water issue, so that everybody, well, I should say everybody, so that most people are comfortable with the direction, and that we're not the end of the world. Looking at the numbers so far of what's been reported, we're about half. We're using about half of the replenishment of the aquifer. So, everything that comes in and pushes in from what we're drawing out, we're using about half of what's being replenished. So we are not in dire straits today. We're not. We just aren't. But that doesn't mean we can ignore it and that we're not at risk of it in the future. So we really have to pay attention to that. And we do have water issues going on. The water levels dropping in the East Valley. The levels of arsenic that we have that are now above the minimum or the maximum allowed, which again, that they lowered the maximum allowance. Our water didn't get bad. It didn't just turn bad. Our water's the same relatively. It's just what was allowed was pushed down. We were sitting here, the bar was here. Well, they pushed that bar down, and that's what closed some of our wells. So we're having to dilute that water. That's one of the things that we've got to start pushing forward, coming up with some kind of a plan, and then sticking with that plan for a long period of time. So that would be really something I'd like to get into. The other thing I'd really like to get into is the budget and seeing, I'm really kind of excited about that. Um, I've said I'm not the money guy, and by that I mean that I don't have a background in finance. That doesn't mean I'm not intelligent and that I don't understand budgets. It just means that I don't have the vocabulary of all these different terms necessarily. I understand how it works, um, and if we can work through, this um, zero-based budgeting, maybe we can get some funding back into our streets department so that they can get some of these streets and the outliers um, taken care of. And so that would be another boon that I'm really looking forward to, is actually getting into the mix on that and starting to better understand and see what there is that could be done. So that's the two biggies: water and budget.
I was inspired to another question. So open space sales tax. So there's it's going on the ballot in November to do a 1/4 cent increase on sales tax to be able to go towards open space. What are your thoughts on that?
That is people going to put their money where their mouth is, isn't it? We all claim to want to preserve our rural character, so now you'd have to pony up or you don't pony up. So I haven't researched that one yet. I know there was a poll on the Record Courier, and I believe it was at 48% yes, and then there was like a less than 10% were undecided. So it looks like, if you trust the poll from the Courier, that people want to do that. So I'm all for helping out the ranchers. So for me personally, I probably am for adding that tax in. That I would be willing to pay that in order to further it. Now, the drawbacks of that is, how's it going to be allocated? Who's managing it? The oversight. I have questions about that. So I would want to know those answers before I actually agreed to that. But that is something that I could get behind in preserving that view corridor, preserving our ag corridor, because it's not just the center of the valley. There's ranch property, and there's all kinds of things that keep us going, and that those ranchers need help with. It's really a dying industry in some respects. That it's harder for new people to come in and start ranching. The established ranches are doing fine, but the new guys that are coming in say, hey, we want to do grass-fed beef. That's a tough industry to crack. You got to have a lot of funding and a lot of startup capital for that. So yeah, it would be nice to give back to those ranchers, I think, in my personal opinion.
Well, it's 7:21, so you can tackle one more issue if you would like to, or we can do a really long wrap up. I will let you choose.
Well, do you have an issue in mind?
Yeah, actually, I could come up with an issue for you.
Let's see if it's better than the one I have in mind.
Rochambeau for it. In today's Record Courier, the signatures, the clerk came back and said that the Park 2500 petition fails the spot check.
Right.
What are your thoughts on that and what that means moving forward?
Well, unfortunately, that means they have to start over. They're going to have to start over and do it again, and make sure they dot their I's and cross their T's. That's demanded of the county commissioners. That's brought up all the time. You can't do this because you didn't follow this rule or that rule, and so it's good for the goose, is good for the gander, as far as I'm concerned on that one. So it's unfortunate that there's so much work been put into that it's going down. But you know what? It was done once; it could be done again. So that's unfortunate. I personally resist signing petitions, because you've already seen how I act. That's one side presented to you. It says sign, and of course, if you just react, go, oh my gosh, that's terrible. Yes, I'll sign, without researching what's really behind that, and then go back and find that and sign that signature or sign that petition. So I'm kind of always a little bit leery of petitions anyway, because they're presented to you on your way into somewhere else. You know, they're out in front of the grocery stores or whatever, the ones that I've seen, and so they're grabbing you. Hey, will you sign a petition for this? Well, what's it about? Well, they're trying to do that. Okay, that's terrible. I'll sign. So that's one of the feelings that I get about it. But you know, I'm the kind of guy that doesn't like to just say yes immediately. I like to think about it and figure out, you know, what's really the reality of that. So I am a little bit leery of petitions. So, you know, but now it's been out there. I feel like the public's pretty well educated on this topic um, for the 2,500. So um, that would be. I don't think that'd be a bad thing to find out again. If it really is the people's will, then the people's will come up again. So you know, it'll come around, and it'll all work out in the end. I would like to, you know, if it was me, I'd like to see a little information about what that development's going to look like. You know, I've seen a draft of it, and it's an agri-hood. So I've started to do a little bit of research on that too. But that development is planning to continue and further our rural character. So that's something that might weigh into people's minds, and whether or not there's actually proposing 2,500 homes in that development. Because what I saw, I don't think added up to that, but I'm not positive. So I don't want to throw that out there. But those are things, you know, find out more information about it. You know, the idea of, you know, where those TDRs came from and flipping them back and forth between out at Topaz into the valley. You know, I have some reservations about that, but I also understand, you know, why it happened that way. I've actually talked to Mr. Park about that, and I understand completely now, you know, why he feels that was okay to do. And right now it's not for me to decide, you know, so I'm not, again, going to throw that out there. But I will continue to look at that. But I'd like for, you know, instead of just saying, oh, 2,500 homes that are going to be built in 30 to 50 years, you know, that's something that we should look at how it's going to be done, not necessarily that it's going to be done. That would be, you know, something I'd like to know a little more about.
Was that the topic you were going to bring up?
Or no, actually.
Oh, well then, you know what? Go for yours.
Mine was a little closer to home. And the coyote issue out here at Johnson Lane. I don't know for you people.
We talked about that the other day.
Yeah. So now I'm going to preface this that when I first moved to Johnson Lane, the water tower was being built up here on the top of the hill, and we would wake up in the morning, and there was a herd of wild horses that we would see out in the mornings at least a couple times a month. So I am very well versed that we have intruded onto the natural landscape. However, the other night, my son went out to get something out of the truck after dark and came right back in because there were 3 coyotes in the front yard, in the driveway and out in the street right out in front of our drive. So he wasn't really willing to go back out there, so unless I went with him. So we went out, and of course I didn't see anything because I'm sure he had scared him off by that time. But it started me thinking, because a few days earlier I had seen one out on the street at 10 o'clock in the morning out in the daylight. And we've been commenting lately that how big those coyotes are. So I'm just beginning to wonder if we need to be a little more vigilant about, you know, what's going on and being a little more protective outside of possibly young kids. There hasn't been any kind of an attack or anything, but definitely your pets. And so I just kind of throwing that out there, that if anybody else has noticed more activity, I know we're entering spring, so there's babies and stuff like that. So there's more food available for the coyotes and more food required because they have their own babies to feed. But just kind of like hey, people watch out, because I've noticed it, and maybe it's just in my yard because I have rabbits and everything, and a ground squirrel that's moved in. So I know that I have some munchies for them living right out in front of my house also. So, but yeah, people do pay attention, do be a little more vigilant. They are here. They do hunt in packs. They are smart, and take care, and just try to do your part to stay safe in our rural environment.
Well, and with that, it's 7:28. So I think you can do your shorter wrap up now.
I thought it was my wrap up.
The Coyotes?
Yeah, that was a wrap up. Stay safe.
Stay
No,
safe.
I guess the wrap up for me is, you know, what you see is what you get. Nathan Tolbert, a candidate for Douglas County Commissioner, District 5. I hope I can count on your vote. Please do get those ballots in, mail them in, deliver them. You can vote there in person in the tent. I'm not sure if they're doing that early voting or not yet. It may. I don't remember. I've watched the video that Kathy put out like 2 times now, and I still forget when active voting is going to be allowed. But remember, it's only that one spot, so it could take a long time, especially if we're still distancing at that time. But do remember the name, Nathan Tolbert for District 5. Will do my best to represent all of the county, all of the constituents as best I can, and be objective.